Imagine you have just graduated and you have your diploma in your hands. Which path do you choose? PhD, corporate, or startups? Welcome to the Here is the Thing podcast, episode 2. We will have yet another heated discussion today about career choices for new graduates. Today we have two very special guests, Akila and Jonathan. Our first guest is Jonathan Collard, a scientist currently working at Bloom, a London-based biotech startup developing algae-based biofuels to help decarbonize the aviation industry. Jonathan completed his bachelor's degree in genetics at King's College London before earning a master's in chemical engineering with biotechnology from Imperial College London. Today, he works downstream on strain characterization to assess biofuel potential, process scale-up, and photobioreactor operation. And it's a pleasure to welcome our next guest, Akila Mehanada. Akila's journey reflects a deep passion for sustainable energy and scientific research. After graduating as the best chemical engineering student at Universitas Gadjah Mada, she continued her studies at Imperial College London, where she completed her master's in advanced chemical engineering. Today, she is pursuing a PhD focused on photoelectrochemical hydrogen production, a technology with the potential to contribute to the future of clean energy. Beyond the laboratory, she has been actively involved in research, teaching, and mentoring, giving her a broad perspective on both academic life and the real-world impact of engineering research. Welcome, both of you. It's a pleasure to have you both here. I'm so excited to have a great discussion. So let's start off with our first question. Okay, how was life after graduating from school? Could you describe your feelings and your current life in comparison to student life?
Okay. After graduating from schools, we just graduated basically, guys, last month. We have just had our graduation ceremony last month. And what my feelings after graduating from master's degree is that maybe I feel more, tend to be resilient because we are facing real life basically. Do you guys agree with that?
Definitely.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, for me, as a PhD student, I feel like people expect me to become more independent as well. That's a different thing besides the master's degree. Yeah, I think that's my feeling. And how about you, John?
No, yeah, I agree. Like in the startup world, like the difference is independence. You get far more independence and you have to be responsible for it. But for me also, the difference is that like you have just so much more free time. I don't know about you, Akila, but like for me, it's like it's 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, maybe sometimes 9 to 7. But then after that, like you don't need to watch a lecture anymore. You don't need to read your notes anymore. Yeah. Like you can actually like when you leave, it's like all the time in the world for you now. And I still haven't figured out how to like use my time better. I have no hobbies. I need to figure them out.
Okay. You should, John. You should to balance the work.
Yeah.
Well, I can speak for this topic as well. To be honest, my feelings is that right after I graduated, I've got into corporate world and it's been 10 months ever since. And I agree with Jonathan for the fact that you can have loads of free time. And I actually gained new hobbies ever since. And it's good because you can discover yourself more, your interests more, not just niche chemical engineering topics. And also, but the responsibility part is tough, especially when you have like too much more stress going on. If you make a mistake, it's such a big trouble compared to where you were in the student life. You have much more tolerance because you're working for yourself only, but now you're working for a team and a company ultimately. So that's my feelings at that point.
Okay, so after graduating, I went back home. And when I was a student, the life was completely different as I compare it now. Basically, I got back to working at my family business and I'm building a startup on the side as well. So being a part of the family business, there is no off-time work. In the dining table also, we are discussing work. So yeah, trying to balance it out and trying to maintain the hobbies that I already have. Nothing new to learn.
Yeah, meanwhile, he's from traveling from one city to another. He's having such a shiny life right now. No? You don't need
it's
to be
very
so
shiny.
humble. Yeah.
Enjoy
He
life.
was in Nepal just earlier in the day.
I was in Nepal in the afternoon.
Nice.
No, it's a 30-minute drive from here, so nothing big.
Starting from the startup life, Jonathan, how's the average age in the startups versus corporate? So I'm curious about how this affects the working environments. Do you think being surrounded by younger people sparks curiosity and results in better outputs?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. The average age in my current startup company is, I'd say like around maybe 30. I don't know their exact ages because I don't know. I feel like it's a bit weird if I ask their exact ages, but I know that they're young, like post PhD or post postdoc at least. It's pretty nice. Having a boss who's young is really nice because after 4 years or 4.5 years of just having like older PIs, older bosses, it's totally different because they sort of understand you a bit more. They sort of understand like your demands, your requirements a bit more, and there's like less of a gap, and they can relate more, which is really nice. It helps out a lot. For work, to answer the second question, does it spark curiosity? I'd say yeah. I mean, like, depending on your startup, if your startup has someone who's senior, like very senior with experience, maybe it's a different experience, but with mine, everyone's pretty much the same age, same level. I'm the youngest, of course, but like just a bit older than me.
Do you feel proud to be the youngest?
At first, but not anymore. I feel like I just want to get older and get more experience, honestly. Being at the bottom is kind of, I mean, it has its pros and cons.
John, do you have a moment when you feel like you need to adapt working with younger people? Because previously you have to work with much older people, right? Do you have a moment like, I need to adapt?
Yeah, honestly, I guess I don't have to be so rigid because with older people, I used to be very rigid. But this time around, I don't have to be like, of course, a bit, but not as much. I can be, a bit more honest with myself, which is really nice. But, or maybe that's because I'm in a startup. Maybe in corporate, it's different, nature. Like maybe you cannot be as honest. I don't know, but yeah.
There are limits to how much I can speak here, so confidentiality agreement.
Confidential.
Yeah, but I totally understand. And yeah, to be honest, I was very proud to be the youngest in my environment too. I don't know why, but even though, yes, you have less experience compared to others, and it's a bit of struggle whenever you do something wrong, it's only depends on your less of experience. But my question was that actually, I think youth really brings up some more ideas to generate because the more time you spend in corporate or a startup company, the more it gets monotonous. And us being new graduates, youth, young and free to having new ideas, I think that's my question to you. Is there ideas generated? Can they turn into reality? So in startups, I'm curious about, especially your experience, whether it's actually easier to bring ideas to implementation.
No, yeah, it's definitely a lot easier. It takes like, at least for my startup, it takes like, honestly, like 2 or 3 meetings, formal meetings, and then like the idea, like the project's been set, and then like it gets started on, and then it gets passed down to like the scientists and the engineers in the team. And if you think about it, like 2 or 3 is quite a small amount of meetings. Like it's quite quick and it happens in a week. It gets formalized and then it gets pushed to the team. So I'm pretty sure that takes a lot longer in corporate. And I think it does help, especially when things go wrong. It allows you to pivot so that you can, hopefully stay on the right track.
Yes, Kunal.
I think I completely agree with what John said because I also believe that in a startup or in a small company, it is easy to do a trial or an experiment and fail at it and not regret it that much and learn from it rather than regretting it. But I think if it's a corporate setting, there is too much at stake. So, for example, a Shell trying to make a new kind of petroleum is very risky for them, for their reputation. A lot is at stake. I think startup gives you that flexibility to try, experiment, and even that results in something very good. And that's why startups exist, I believe.
Yeah, it gives you more informal circumstances that will allow you to be more flexible, I think.
Yeah, I'm glad that we're on the same page. If you're not, that's also very fine. I'm glad to have heated discussions. So, speaking of the general startup idea, it's good that we have our learnings, but I'm very curious about technical career path that you've chosen too, Jonathan. So what led you to choose a biotech startup instead of academia or a large pharmaceutical company, as most of the chemical engineers choose that path?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Honestly, okay, this is quite a hard question.
There was opportunity.
Yeah.
I went for it.
Oh, okay, honestly, it's because I mean, I did initially apply to like large pharmaceuticals as well as PhDs and then startups. So I applied to all three. And to be honest, I took, well, no large pharma wanted to take me, and that was where I wanted to go initially. But then I got into a startup. It was a cool experience. So it's just because this opportunity came, if I'm being honest.
I see. But I know that you have contributed in the uni societies. You were the leader. Do you think that it had an impact in landing you the role?
I think, okay, this is my take on societies and like clubs and all of this. I think they can help you to a certain extent, but I think the better way to use clubs and societies is to like just like blow off steam, to like take your mind off work. I don't know how far a club can take you. I think it can take you much further if you're like there with your friends, laughing, taking your mind off, so that when you get back into like class or you get back into the coursework or the exam, you have a refreshed mind. I think that's a better approach. So my answer would be like, did it help? Probably a tiny bit, but I think it helped more in that way.
I have a question for you, Jonathan. Sorry to interrupt, Aja. You were heading the biotech competition for Imperial, right? So if you can share more about how was the experience of carrying a team of 10, 15, or I'm not sure about the number, but from the research pathway to finalizing and pitching, how was that experience for you?
Yeah. So the competition was IGEM. It's like International Synthetic Biology Competition.
Yeah.
The final conference and competition is held in Paris. It's a 12-month project. You're meant to go through like the whole life cycle of the project. It was a new experience, definitely. It was my first time leading a team. It was like, I think either 12 or 15 people. I forget the exact numbers because it grew with time. But when you're in a leadership position, it's actually surprising how like you do less hands-on science. You're not actually the one doing the experiments anymore. You're actually just, in my opinion, the decision maker, and you just have to make the right decisions. Oh, of course, along the way you make some wrong decisions, but yeah, hopefully you make good decisions. Our project was specifically on like basically improving a chassis that's commonly used in pharmaceuticals, just improving it so that we can like produce higher titers. And yeah, that was essentially our project.
What's the challenge you faced at that time, John, regarding the project?
Honestly, it's like the cliche answer to like leadership. It's like honestly like working with everyone and like making sure everyone's happy and making sure everyone's strength is where it's meant to be, like where they will thrive. That bit is quite hard. I mean, of course, especially when it's someone, you know, as young as me, I didn't have leadership experience. Like I've always been like either the scientist or the engineer or like, I don't know, maybe a writer, but I've never been like the person leading it. And honestly, like putting people where they're meant to be is very, very difficult. And yeah, that was, in my opinion, the hardest challenge. Like a lot of hard convos, a lot of arguments occurred because of it. And when I reflect on it, especially because of my current
Even I know
experience
one of them.
Wait, really? I don't remember. But yeah, no. When I reflect on it with my corporate like experience now, I mean, I'm looking at people who do this for a living, and you know, they're learning as well. So I realize everyone's learning basically. So
And how about networking in the societies? I've always heard from other people before I went to uni that societies would bring you more network and you would get jobs and offers, but it never happened to me, even though I was very active in the societies. Do you agree with this point or not?
I don't know how extreme I can take my takes, but like I have a hot take on this. I don't use networking events like how you're meant to use them, which is like you meet someone, you know, hopefully you make a connection so that later on you'll be useful down the road. I want to know your guys' experience. Maybe I'm turning the question on you guys. How useful is it? Because to me, it didn't feel useful, so I gave up and I just started making friends.
Okay, I want to go first because in my undergraduate, I was very active in societies. I led two societies. I was president in one and treasurer in one. So for me, societies proved to be very good. It built my resume. I think 40-50% of my resume for applying to Imperial was from because of societies, keeping aside the internships. It had projects, case books, all those kind of things. And networking. I think some of the best friends that I have got from college are the people I met in societies. And if I talk about Imperial, how societies function in India, in Indian universities, and how it functions over there, I think it's very different. I was a part of Chem and Soc. It was a different experience. I was not that active though, because the masters was very stressful. I think stressful is the right word. But I tend to attend the networking events that the Imperial Entrepreneurship Society organized and all those kind of things. I think for me, it was good. I got to know some very interesting people, know some very interesting ideas, and got to listen some very good talks by some really cool people. So I think for me, it turned out to be good.
I think networking is important, but the more important is to maintain the network itself. Because I think quality is more important than quantity. Because sometimes if in my experience, when I have a good quality in maintain networking with people, it gives me more opportunity, more experience, and more, access to get a better place in my experience. So yeah, I think to maintain that network is more important.
Thank you, Akila, for this. And I agree to all of your points. And to add on top of that, I think networking brings me confidence because the more people I get to know from diverse fields, the more confident I become in what I want to do. But I agree on Jonathan's point, thinking that when I meet someone, I need to start off with friendship, not think like for my own advantage. They are going to be my network. And when you're very young, especially at uni, thinking of friendships as like turning into networks in the future is more like it just affects the dynamics of the friendship itself. So if you're thinking from a very business mind perspective at a very young age, it's good for you, I think, because there are many people that creates their own company with their best friends, which is, I think, a different hot topic, because I'm not sure if you could start a company with your best friend. It would even affect that dynamic as well. Once money gets into relationships, it's, I think, something that's very, very dangerous. But it's a whole other topic. But if you guys want to talk about it, we can discuss, or we can get to another question. Let's get to
I
another
think we
question.
can spare 5 minutes. I think we can spare 5 minutes for this question. What do you
Okay.
guys think?
I think Kunal, you can go first since your, side
Yeah,
project is
I have no
startup.
experience about
Yeah, I
it.
have no experience in this.
No, I also don't have experience of building with my best friend, but I think it does get tricky when money comes into the equation. But I think when you are friends with someone for a very long time, at some point or the other, money does get into equation, and then you know how will your relation be with them for the next few years. And I think for me, I have not found anyone as of yet who I can be the co-founder with for a company. That's what I believe. Yeah, apart from the one who is the co-host over here. But I think, I mean, we have examples where we have seen companies that are being built by best friends that are doing good. But there are examples as well where people meet randomly and then build and then develop friendship. It's like a love marriage and an arranged marriage. We can compare it to that as well. I've seen people who just met randomly on LinkedIn and built very cool companies and sold it as well. So I think it can be both ways, business and then friendship, or friendship and then business, something like that. But yeah, I think one day I would like to build a company with a friend. I'm keen on that. That's my take.
That's great. Thank you very much, Kunal, for this great explanation. Do you guys have anything else to add on top of this, or?
Maybe like I agree with Kunal. Like it's a bit tricky with money, but like I think with the right person it should be all right. I think they'll understand you, If I think if you're with the wrong it kind of like relationship advice. If you're with the wrong person, I think you'll know, like you both know. It goes both ways. You'll know like this is not working out.
I think as long as the objective is clear and it has a fixed purpose, I think that's okay.
Akila said the last words, and it was quite effective. Then we are moving on with the next question. Okay, Jonathan, what trends in biotechnology excite you the most over the next 5 to 10 years, or the next 5 months even?
Since starting my job, I haven't been keeping track of like trends because I'm in such a rabbit hole, like algae for biofuel. Like, that's pretty much all the papers I'm reading right now. So it's a bit tricky, but honestly, wait, what are your guys' favorite trends in biotech?
Yeah, I have expertise in biotechnology, but okay, let me share my take first. So, I am really excited about nanobiotechnology. Not particularly biotechnology, but how can we mix nanotechnology and biotechnology and make some very good products? And one thing that motivates me is how can we use nanotechnology and biotechnology to get solutions that can replace the harmful chemicals that are being used. I think that is what excites me right now, and I think biotechnology has the answer for that. If we look, a very recent example in agriculture is we have been using pesticides for very long. The land quality has deteriorated all across the globe and everything. And now companies, especially European companies as of now, are working towards solutions of secondary metabolites as pesticides. So just to tell to the audience what secondary metabolites are basically produced by bacteria or fungus that are not essential for their living, but it is a part of their life cycle that they secrete. So basically creating a stimulus or something of that sorts. So people are using secondary metabolites as pesticides or fertilizers as well. So I think for agriculture, that's one thing I would look forward to.
Yeah. Wow. Especially
I
in,
think,
yeah,
yeah,
there you go.
go for it, Aisha.
For sustainable agriculture and like clean agriculture, especially for pesticides, I think it's really important that will open up many paths. It will increase lifespan of billions, maybe. Actually, it's very interesting that biotech is going that path. It's like kind of health technology as well. And it's really important to have the disciplines to understand the mechanics behind it, even though it seems like that's just bio. I think there is a big mechanic behind that. People need to have not only bio education, but also some sort of various disciplines. So that's one question, Kunal. What do you think a person would need to fully function a biotech startup, or just the product itself, especially if you're thinking of pesticides that are harmless?
I think it's not a very relatable answer there for the question you asked, but somewhat relatable is the problem with building a biotech company or a biotech solution versus building a software solution is biotech companies need a lot of R&D, R&D, R&D. And once the R&D is done, there are a lot of testings that are into place. So even if you have a good product, and if I talk about agriculture, there are, I think, thousands of technologies all across the globe that are not getting approved. They are very good technologies, but not getting approved because there are no guidelines for it. So you might build a very cool solution, a very sustainable solution, but if the people who at the top or the regulatory bodies are not ready to accept the solution or has a framework for it, then the lab work, the years of hard work goes into vain. And when we compare it with a software company, it's very dynamic. People are building AI startups every other day. We are getting to know about AI startups. Someone is building this, someone is building that. And since there is comparatively less regulatory framework and openness, I would say, in that industry, that's why that is also the reason where biotech startup and software startup, the ratio is very big. So this is a major hurdle in the biotech companies. The same goes for pharmaceutical, I guess, as well. It is being used in humans, so I think even stricter than agriculture.
So that's a great take, because actually one of the things that I've always heard from my surroundings about biotechnology is a challenge to sustain the quality of these biosources, because they're bio, they have a lifespan, and ultimately that biosource needs to be sustained in a specific environment. And I've heard that it's very hard to sustain, and that's a big challenge for people to actually implement in industrial application.
Exactly, I 100% agree to it. And another issue that people face is we keep talking about waste to wealth, but what about the uniformity of the waste that you're getting? Waste can be anything. If you're building a biofuel from a waste product, how can you make sure that every time if you buy 10 metric tons, every time the 10 metric tons will have the same composition, same amount of carbon sources or whatever? That is another problem. Yeah, shelf life and storage conditions, working conditions, all those matter too.
Yeah, I agree with that. We always facing many challenges when we deal with biosource. I had an experience in biotechnology when I was in undergrad. I did wastewater treatment basically with bacteria, and that's very complex. We need to maintain the operation condition, and then dealing with biosource is not that easy, right? So, and also the one thing that most important also is to determine how we scale up our technology. That's another thing, right? It's very challenging. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with all the points that you made, Akila. It's quite challenging in all those senses. But I think in order to make this come a reality, especially for industry, as I said before, the biotech professionals need to be competent so that they will try to find the solutions that, while still being harmless for the society, they can keep products with longer shelf lives. So maybe to Jonathan or Kunal, this question goes to you. Which skills do you think will become essential for the next generation of biotech professionals?
Jonathan, would you like to go first?
Okay, yeah. I think the core research skills are still going to be relevant. You'll still need them, of course. But definitely in addition to that I think is quite important is, okay, I'm going to just group these things together. Big data, AI, bioinformatics, just having a finger or maybe a hand in sort of analytics and data is definitely the way forward, because you can already see the trend. A lot of stuff going on in bio now always will either involves AI or involves some form of big data, where there's just a lot of high throughput experimentation going on, and a lot of data is coming out of that, and someone has to be able to analyze it. I think this is just the way biotech is heading, so I think this is quite an important skill.
I think my take would be to having more bioprocessing engineers, maybe, because once the lab scale projects are done, you have to hop on to the pilot scale production and then large scale production. So in chemical engineering, you have a lot of people who are experts in scale ups or scale up operations and process engineers and all those things. But I think relatively bioprocess engineers are way too less in number. And I think it can be the next profession because R&D will always go on. As Jonathan said, people will still be working on R&D. But I think for a wide scale adoption, we need more processing engineers in biotechnology.
Honestly, wait, can I like add something to that as well?
Yeah, please.
Oh yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, Kunal, because when you said that, I actually like got reminded of something, which is like my PhD application. That was literally like the main thing that I wrote in it, so I can't believe I didn't answer with that. So I fully agree with you, Kunal. Where like the number of biologists, we don't need any. Yeah, this is my opinion. This is my opinion. We don't need any more biologists. Like we have enough, in my opinion. Like we're saturated. We can barely get jobs. What we need, as Kunal said, and I'm saying very informally, is we need bioprocess engineers, or like to put it bluntly, let's say chemical engineers who are very proficient and want to do biotechnology. Because frankly, there's a big gap there where there's like amazing chemical engineers like Akila and Aicha, but they don't want to step into biotech, which is totally fair. It's their decision. And then there's the biologists on the other side, which was me originally. I did my undergrad in biochem, genetics, the classic stuff, who, again, they like doing biology, which is, again, fair enough to them. That's what they like doing. But, once you produce something, as Kunal said, you have to scale it up. And, that takes, engineering knowledge. And so we need more people like that.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Wow. Now it's good that this is our generation. The engineers will step up. So, to Jonathan again, what is something that corporate culture needs to add from a startup culture? And what do you think is missing in a startup culture?
Okay, I think I have a very unrealistic answer, but I think it's like the answer. It's my answer. I think corporate needs to be more flexible, and I know that's very difficult to achieve. I mean, you have layers that's just how corporate is. You have layers that you have to go through, which don't help flexibility. But in some way, like after experiencing startup culture where things just get done, you speak to less people and it just gets done. Like the shortened timelines is amazing. And I feel like in corporate, like that flexibility, that speed, that agility, it would be really, really good and really cool. And then the reverse, that's a bit tricky because the thing is, I haven't really worked in corporate. Maybe then Aicha, you could answer like the second half of the.
What do you think is missing in a startup culture? So it's again your question. What's what negative disadvantage?
Like because of that structure, actually, there's a lot of miscommunication. Of course, I experience this quite often. Yeah, miscommunication is quite common in a startup where like one person says something, they go on and do something, and then the other person hasn't been liaised, which normally would be done in corporate because, well, for you to even get started, you have to tell someone. Whereas in startup, there's less of that. So there's a lot of miscommunication where that person hasn't done something, that person has done something. It can also be applied to like inventory. It's the same thing again, where because it's a startup, so some things are just run out and no one chose to let it be known. So now your experiment has been delayed for a week, yeah. That would, of course, never happen in corporate, I assume, where because things are tracked, things are kept up, and there's just, communication is quite strong, I think.
And thank you for the answer. And also about the communication, of course, things can get a little tense when things are economically fluctuating. So that was also my question that I wanted to ask to you. In a startup culture, especially if it's not a global company, is it affected from the economical fluctuations or is it just not affected?
Okay, so I actually have a pretty good answer to this. I think yes and no. I think no, because it's not actually, like, let's be real, my startup is not being impacted, by the current global economy. But what it is impacted is indirectly, where because there are changes in the global economy, investors, and that's how startups get money, investors are changing their interests. A lot of things are being shifted away from like very high risk projects. I mean, biotech's notoriously high risk. I mean, you don't often get returns from investing in a biotech company. So that biotech was already hard enough. And with the changes, investors are now a lot more risk adverse. So they don't really want to put in money into biotech. And that then indirectly impacts my startup and startups in biotech. Yeah. So it is honestly much harder now to get funding. Like, I think pre-seed is okay. So when you have an idea and you're pitching it and you get money, I think that's still okay. And then I think seed, not too sure, maybe it is still okay, but definitely once you get to like series A, B, C, that it takes a lot of convincing. It takes a lot of good data that your thing works, because at that point you're scaling. And if it doesn't actually work, then that's a lot of money down the drain.
Jonathan, I'm wondering about this. You mentioned about funding. Do you guys doing collaboration with university in terms of your R&D or not?
Okay, not my startup in particular, but I have a friend who worked in another startup, and that does happen where the startup funds a PhD to get a piece of the project pushed forward, and then in return, the university, doesn't have to pay for the company pays for that student. So that happens very common. There's
Yeah.
some NDA that happens, but the one thing I think this is important for you, Akila, is that your results aren't yours anymore. Let's say like Kunal was funding you, like a PhD student. Kunal owns the research. They cannot spin it off. That's just how it is. So it depends on what the student wants.
I see. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I think it was a very valid point that your research is not your own.
Yeah. It's like a new trend in PhDs where there's industry collaborators. But yeah, it's just something to keep in mind that like the whole point of a PhD is that it's your own work. Not to say that it's not your work, like you did the work, but now that work is tied to someone else. So
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, and it's connecting with the motivation as well. I think we can discuss more because the sense of belonging our project in the PhD is really important for me.
But doesn't it belong to the school as well, the institution? Like at the end of the day, the PhD, of course, it's your paper, your work that you do. But for instance, in my master's, I did another PhD person's project, and that belonged to that institution. And I had to give up of all the MATLAB codes that I built to the Imperial College.
Yeah, maybe it depends, on the institution and how they have the agreement between them. Yeah, I think it depends.
But at the end of the day, I get your point. When you work for a PhD, you can see your work very vividly and it's something tangible and you have a product if it's like a research article or something else. And I agree that you can more see it effectively that it belongs to you, that source of belongingness. And Kunal had a very interesting question as well to ask you guys at the end of the podcast too, but I think he's keeping it for the end.
Sure, I am.
I'm very excited to transition to Akila's part where we will discuss more of the PhD world. So starting from first, a very generic question, AI, artificial intelligence that has come inside our lives so quickly. So what do you think of the automation of paper writing in the academy in the age of AI? Do you think it is fair considering that people spend tons of more time to write a similar paper, for instance, whereas some other people is just generating automatically and just in 3 days, they can publish it. I understand that to some extent we use it, but how do you balance it out is my question.
Yeah, it's happening now. AI is everywhere and many AI, not only one. Yeah, we agree with that, right? AI is really powerful tool in helping us in research, in studying, we often use that, for example, for organize ideas, for structuring, for even sometimes, sorting the references. It's helping a lot. I agree with that. But I think the issues start when people use AI to replace the thinking process, because I know someone sometimes just simply upload their data, as the whole data, and then ask AI to generate the whole paper, including the interpretation, the whole discussion, and the whole references, and then you can generate paper as many as you want after that. And I think that's not fair because you generate that paper basically without understanding the content, right? And for me, AI cannot replace human thinking because for me, research is a long journey. It's not just doing experiment for me. Research needs more your critical thinking. It trains your creativity. It trains how you communicate your findings to others. And yeah, those are really important skills that cannot be built if we always depend on AI, right?
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Then putting all these together, I also wonder how you decide on an actual project, because the fact that you put so much effort in it, and I agree that it should be all your work, mostly the thought and decision process. And from end to end, what factors should someone consider before committing a 4 to 6 years of PhD?
Yeah, this is an important question when someone wants to decide to spend their long years, 4 to 6 years for doing a PhD. I think one thing to pay attention is to choose the right research field. I think that's the most important thing because PhD basically is not only one interest, it's not only one interesting project. It's like a marathon. And if I can give an advice for this, you should choose a research field that make you sure that you are excited to do it every day. So you should ensure that you are really interested in that topic and it can maintain your motivation to do it every day. That's really important because we know that some people, for example, some people can enjoy doing simulation, doing programming, while some people enjoy doing more in experiment in lab, right? Like me, for example, I'm kind of a person who enjoy to spend hours in the lab. Like I enjoy doing troubleshooting of my equipment, something like that. So yeah, the most important thing is to have the research field that really makes you interested to do it every day, I think.
Yeah, I want to add something on top of that. Once I was watching a podcast of a PhD person actually, and that person told us a very similar thing. He said that the fact that I am able to work on topics that really sparks my interest and curiosity, and yet I'm earning money out of it, is a privilege. So he feels privileged to study a PhD because he's working on topics that he's actually interested, not like, classic corporate jobs where you have to repeat some of the things over and over again, but the topics that actually you are interested in, and yet you earn some amount of money, even though it's not as satisfactory as some corporate jobs. So that's my follow-up question. If anyone does not want to speak about it further, come on. Yeah.
I have a follow-up question on that. How easy/difficult it is to pivot your project topic? Maybe whatever reason it might be for the pivot. How easy or difficult the process is mentally, and then paperwork and all those
The
kind of
process
things.
of deciding or after deciding?
I mean, you have decided your project, but due to whatever reason, you have to pivot your project topic. So how easy or difficult it is, covering all the aspects included.
Okay, for me, it's easy after you feel that you enjoy it, I think. Because I think you can sustain your motivation when you feel that you are curious. So it's another important thing as well, to have the curiosity, to have the ability to have a next research question that I'd say, Kunal. Yeah, because for me to maintain my motivation is to have that curiosity, I think.
That's an
Okay,
incredible
got it.
take, I think. Because I
Yeah.
always used to think that PhD people would be people that are more stable, that knows what they're doing, that's very decisive. But actually, right now in this age, even people that are going from a PhD path needs to be flexible and dynamic and adaptive, is what you're saying, right, Akila?
Yeah, agree, Aja.
And how about the supervisors then? Like, what if you don't like your supervisor? Because I realize the relationships are really important in PhD. How do you choose a supervisor? And what if you don't enjoy working with them? Can you actually change your path, and how difficult it is?
Yeah, supervisor is, for me, supervisor is someone who not only expertise in the research field, but it's important also to have supervisor who genuinely support your progress, the whole research group progress, to develop their expertise. And yeah, one thing that I'd say about supervisor, maybe for the future students that want to apply PhD, is that the first thing, it's important to you guys to evaluate their research profile. You can search in for their research publication, the number of, the index, the citation profile, something like that in the Google Scholar. You can find that. With that point, you can determine whether they are active enough in that research field. And yeah, the second point is to learn how they supervise their students. So you can ask the former students, for example, how they maintain the regular meetings, how they encourage the student when they have discussion, maybe how the students regularly publish their research. Do previous students graduate on time, for example? That's another important thing. So yeah, I highly recommend maybe for students to have like an informal meeting first with their future supervisor, like an unofficial meeting, something like that, before choosing that. With that way, you can understand their communication style, their expectation about the research, and whether their personality compatible with your working style. That's the thing that I can say, Acha.
Yeah, I see your point. That means we have to be more open to interact more with the people that we want to work with so that we actually get to know them before we start working with them. And it's also, I think, starts with knowing yourself, what do you want, and also knowing the other person, the PhD professor, etc., who will be consulting. That's great topic. And for a student that is thinking of PhD in the future, I'm pretty sure one of the top two questions, the second question, is the scholarship. So how is it like studying a PhD in London? How to find a scholarship? So lifestyle, please tell us your experience.
Yeah, in London, yeah, as long as I heard, it's difficult, especially for international students, because many scholarship is for the home students. Do you agree with this, Jonathan? Or not?
Yeah, that is very true. Yes.
Yeah, for international. So if the scholarship tend to be, for the home students, it will not cover the visa application, the health insurance, right? So that will be the challenge for international students to apply. But I think now there are many sources of scholarship as well. Like for myself, so I got the scholarship from Indonesian government basically. Yeah, so there are many different funding source, I'd say, that are from governments, from the department itself, or maybe it's sometimes professor get funding and then they make it as a project based, so they recruit the PhD students. It also can be the alternative. And I also heard my friend that have funding project from the foundation, for example, like maybe in the medicine field, there is like British Heart Foundation, and we have UKRI as well. So it can be a lot of funding sources basically. And yeah, I say that each scholarship will be having different requirement as well, right? So yeah, some prioritize the academic performance, maybe the other emphasize more about the research ability, the research experience, or leadership, for example. So yeah, it will be varied actually.
Then those people who will apply for the scholarships also need to be competent in terms of different sort of skills. Speaking of skills, there are some different type of characteristics and MBTI types, personalities, and we all know that there are two types that are extroverted or introverted. And as far as I've understood, there is a stereotype in PhD that most people who are doing a PhD are introverted, or they are happy with spending most of their time alone. Do you agree with this point or not? How social can you be while studying PhD?
I think I don't agree with that statement because I have a lot of friends that is extrovert as well. So I think it's a wrong statement, I'd say. How do you think, Kunal?
agree, by the way. I totally disagree with the fact that people think PhD people are introverted. That's not a thing. Some people can get their energy from outside. It's just their jobs are in the lab. Doesn't mean that they're introverted.
Yeah, I ever get this statement from my friends. It's really interesting. He said that PhD is not only thing that you do in life. You not only live for PhD. So you can balance your life with other things, right? With other activities. So there's nothing to worry about. Spend hours in the lab. You can still maintain your life, basically, balancing your life.
I think it depends completely on person to person. In corporates, you might find introverts. In labs, you might find extroverts. And I think majority of the labs are on a shared basis. So you have to interact with a lot of people using the common facilities, accommodating different people's schedule using the common facilities, all those kind of things. So I think it completely depends on how people are. And yeah, there is a stereotype that lab people are introverts, but I think it's not the same now.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Johnson, do you have any points to make?
No, yeah, I agree with Kunal. Like in my startup, I see a few people that are introverted, and then I see a few people that are extroverted. I think it's just It's just how it is.
So Jonathan is claiming that in every single environment, we need each sort of personality so that when we gather together, we can actually build something valuable. And speaking of these social interactions, I'm actually wondering a question that merges startup with PhD. I always wondered how people start their own company from starting it like they do a PhD and then in the middle of it, they quit their PhD because something comes in their head, either because of the studies that they do, and they start their own company. So can you see yourself in a few years, jumping into a startup out of the things that you are working on right now? Or do you think it's feasible or applicable? Have you ever seen from your surroundings, since you have more network in PhD sector?
Okay, maybe I will start first. For me, in my project, I think now it's a bit impossible to do startup because what I'm doing in this PhD, the project is about photoelectrochemical hydrogen production, right? It's still in the early stage, so the technology readiness level is still low. That's why I think to apply it in a startup is not a good idea now. We need to still improve, still develop the materials, the stability of the materials. So I'd say it's in the R&D stage. We still need to do a lot of things to develop, to optimize, the operation conditions, something like that, to be able to apply it in the real application.
I see your point. But maybe those people who quit their PhD in the middle doesn't necessarily have to pursue to start their company about the PhD that they were working on. Or maybe because of the challenges they faced during their PhD, they're saying like, what am I doing right now? I need to change my path. So there's always a time to discover yourself of whether you're doing the right thing for yourself. Maybe that's my take. How about you, Kunal?
Having no experience in PhD, but I think it totally depends on what stage of product development are you working on a PhD. If it's building something completely novel, as Akila said, it's about the TRL, technology readiness level. If it's very early, it might be very difficult because you need loads of funding. And if you look from investors' perspective, giving the money to a new guy or a new girl who have a team of 2 or 3 people versus giving it to an institution like Imperial College with highly eminent professors and all those kind of things, I think they would opt for Imperial College or something like that, King's, Oxford, whatever it may be. But I think if the technology is at a very post MVP, around they are finalized with the prototype, making some alteration in the process, all those kind of things, maybe someone cracks a different type of synthesis that makes the process better and they build everything around that. That might be a more feasible option. I think that's MVP is TRL5. So if someone is building beyond TRL5, they are more easy to convert it into a startup rather than building from scratch.
Thank you very much, Kunal. Maybe the world needs Aquila to start her own R&D company. Maybe you need to
Definitely.
expedite this process so that
Maybe.
you can actually scale up things further. Okay. Thank you very much for such a great discussion. So we are transitioning to the questions for both of you guys. So overall, thinking back on the questions and the answers that we had, did this startup culture compensated your expectations, Jonathan? And did the PhD compensated your expectations, Aquila?
I think I had zero expectations with startup, and honestly, I learned a lot. It feels not so different to university. It's just, it feels like university, a group project with just some add-ons, some like formal add-ons that you have to follow. I feel like corporate would have been a much bigger shift. I think it would have been like totally different to anything I've experienced right now. Because right now, startup just feels like a group of people that are just trying to achieve something, which is kind of like what a group project is.
Interesting, John. For me, PhD really met my expectations. I really enjoy this stage of PhD, guys. For me, I'd say that in PhD, you not only challenging process is in that you have to solve many problems every day by yourself, basically. But I think it's more becoming someone to never stop learning, I guess. And it will ensure you to stay curious, to keep asking questions, to enjoy the process of learning. And I think it makes the PhD more meaningful because of the challenge itself for me. Yeah.
You're a great inspiration, to be honest. Genuinely, you're a great inspiration. Because embracing the challenge and I think loving the challenge is the most important part. I've heard from the ice skater girl. She's from the US, and in one of her interviews, she's saying, well, I like when things get harder because when I succeed, then it gives me the most satisfaction. Just last two questions left. The second one will be Kunal's philosophical question. This one was what you guys are proud of. It can be in the past, it can be now, it can be what you want to achieve in the future.
You go first, Jonathan.
Okay, if it's any time, then yeah, it was my year in Imperial. I mean, very transformative. I feel like I changed a lot and I like it. I don't know I'm not really good at describing this, but I'm proud of the experience.
Yeah, for me, the same. Basically, studying in Imperial is one of my best turning point in my life. Yeah, because it's not only an opportunity to studying about particular topic, about particular chemical engineering, it's basically beyond that. I'm able to know many international friends, and then I have more networking with not only people from university but also from the professionals. And then I found myself progressing a lot here. Even in this PhD, I still progressing as well, but I really enjoy the time here in Imperial. That changed me a lot.
That's a great answer. Kunal, what are you proud of?
I think same as well. The last year at Imperial was a transformative for me as well. I learned a lot of things, tried to be independent, do things for myself, made friends from different cultures. So honestly, having friends from different cultures completely changes your mindset, how you perceive things, how you perceive people, how you perceive their conditions. I think it changes a lot. And I think I got more emotional after coming to London as when I was in Delhi. So I think that was a big upgrade that happened in my system.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's our main motivation to actually start this podcast, guys, because the fact that we have seen so many different cultures and backgrounds, there's a lot to share. Of course, great minds think alike, and you guys are great minds, and we do have similar points. What it's so amazing to see from your perspective the world itself, and it's such eye-opening session every time we come together and speak together, and that's what I'm proud of. I'm proud to get out of my comfort zone and just like also getting to know such like diverse fields and cultures. And Kunal, to finish up, do you want to ask your final question?
Yeah, sure. So, I like to ask a very intellectually stimulating question. By the way, I read this at Heathrow Airport, nothing too much intellectual about that. So, an attempt to differentiate leads to an attempt to belong. What's your take on that?
I mean, yeah,
Do you know the
I
show
agree.
called like Hot Wings? So there's a
Huh?
host, Sean Evans, and that
Yeah.
person just gives hot wings to people. And while asking questions, as they're eating those hot wings, they get like more spicier so that they stop talking at some point. I feel like that host because right now, the more harder the questions get, you guys get more silent, and at some point it gets
Yeah.
like,
Oh, spicy.
exactly, yeah. We don't need hot wings for that.
Yeah, sure. Basically, just to break it down, we as a society are trying to differentiate from each other. I think mainly because we don't want to project like someone else, so we try to differentiate ourselves from others. But that differentiation is leading to a creation of a new community that is a result of a differentiation factor, but somehow creating a belonging community. I hope what I am trying to say. Did that make sense?
So he's saying like we're trying to differentiate by trying different things and like try to step out from the crowd. But meanwhile, while we're working on these topics and things, at some point we still go to another path that has the society itself as well. So we feel like we're going from another path, but meanwhile, we're still belonging to another society where everyone is trying to differentiate. So, you know, the recent hot topics like sustainability and things like that, and we're trying to discover new things. But at some point, we still feel like we are converging to some place that we still belong to.
So, as just one more example that popped out of my mind, the famous poem "The Road Not Taken" by Robert Frost. He tends to take the road not taken, and as a society, if you look into it, there are 1,000 people at the roadblock. 900 will be at the common road, but there might be 100 people who are at the road not taken because they thought, yeah, these 10 people are going that way, I will go that way. but cumulatively you will see a lot of people at the end of the road that was not taken, something like that.
All right, maybe we will leave the rest just like the when you write a book and then you leave the rest to the readers. We will leave the rest to the people who are watching this. Maybe. If
Okay.
there's no any further things to speak, I would like to thank both of you to this incredible episode. Here is the Thing podcast. Thank you all so much, and we wish you good luck in the rest of your journey. I hope we record more sessions together because I enjoyed here speaking with you guys.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you for joining, Akila and Jonathan. I really enjoyed the conversation and I didn't realize that it's 1 hour 22 minutes already. So
Thank you.
I think that's a good
Thank you.
sign. I hope you guys had a good experience and thank you for joining.
Thank you very much, Kunal and Aisha, for having us.
Yeah. Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye
Have a
bye.
lovely day.
Bye bye.